We're off and running in a new series that we started last week with Ruth's help, which will be covering this term of Mondays, exploring the message that Jesus gives in what's known as the Sermon on the Mount. It's a collection of teachings which stretch across 3 whole chapters in Matthew's Gospel. Now, there's some debate from Bible scholars as to whether or not Jesus delivered this teaching all at once as one long sermon, or whether Matthew was perhaps grouped together various sayings of Jesus to kind of compile a greatest hits, if you like, of Jesus' words together. Either way, it doesn't really matter, because as we read through it and as we'll go through it over the weeks to come, it works as a flow of teaching in which Jesus shares kind of a practical blueprint, if you like, for how to live life God's way. And so last week, if you were here or you've caught up on YouTube, Ruth kicked things off by looking at the beginning of this sermon, this collection of teachings, dipping into what are called the Beatitudes, those blessed are sayings that Jesus shared. And so this week, continue with what comes next. So a little reading here from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 5, verses 13 to 16. We'll see what Jesus shares with us through this.
You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven.
There we go. A short and sweet, or short and salty beginning, if you like, with those ones. I guess it's 2 pithy but profound sayings of Jesus in which he tells his followers, and we can say by association, tells us what we are, describes us as the salt of the earth and the light of the world. And so if we start with the latter one first, the light analogy he has. This idea of us being the light of the world. Well, I guess the first thing that might strike us is that elsewhere, Jesus describes himself as the light of the world, famously saying at one point, I am the light of the world. And so if Jesus is the light of the world, how come he also says that we are the light of the world? Well, I suggest it's probably a both and kind of thing. Yes, Jesus is the light of the world, the one who illuminates life itself. But we're called by Jesus to shine with the same kind of light. The light of Jesus shining out of our lives, allowing his goodness, his joy, his love to be the thing which others are lit by and drawn to, perhaps. That's probably why Jesus talks about the importance of enabling other people to see the light in our lives. He says this, he says, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. In other words, don't be shy about doing good. Be confident about it. Not in some cocky way, like look at me, but in a way that says, no, actually this matters. This is important to me because it's important to God. This is the right way to live. Indeed, the word that Jesus uses here, which we translate in this verse as good, as in good deeds, it doesn't mean good as in quality, but good as in beautiful. That's the kind of light Jesus is talking about. Actions in which the beauty of love, of light, of life can be seen in ways that move people towards God, because it's beautiful to do good things. It's attractive to do good things. It attracts people to God, the one who's behind all goodness. Indeed, in my experience, I think people are moved when they see other people living in ways characterized by kindness and compassion and generosity and gentleness. I don't know if you've seen that post office series that was on ITV. That was incredibly moving, and the injustice of it riled you, got you really angry. But the care that was demonstrated to those who were struggling, that was what was most moving to me, that kind of solidarity and the compassion that people had. There's something in that seems to be attractive in your way, that light of goodness, that light that Jesus is calling us to share, light which ultimately comes from him. And so I wonder how we might offer that light, that beautiful goodness to others this week. But then alongside this, Jesus also describes us as the salt of the earth. It's a phrase we use to this day. You're the salt of the earth, meaning someone who's decent and honest and humble and grounded. They're all good qualities to have. But I guess knowing how salt was used in Jesus' day, he perhaps had other thoughts in mind as well. So, for example, as you may know, salt was used in ancient times to preserve things, because rubbing salt onto meat or fish in the days before refrigerators would make it last longer. Maybe that's what Jesus had in mind, that we are to be people who prevent the world from decaying or being ruined, looking after people, caring for creation, championing, sustaining what's good in life. Then again, salt was also used in Jesus' day to destroy things as well. Too much salt can be quite poisonous. So notably, weeds or farmers would use it to stop unwanted crops from taking root, much as we might sprinkle salt on dandelions in the cracks on our paths or something. I guess that's the flip side of preserving things. Yes, we preserve what's good, but it seems Jesus is also calling us to root out things that are wrong, to challenge injustice, to prevent neglect, to counter gossip or greed, all things which block God's light, that run counter to his ideals for the world. But then thirdly, and perhaps most obviously, we're called, it seems, to be the kind of salt that adds real flavour to life in a good way. Just as food is nearly always enhanced by salt. I can't remember the last time I had chips without salt on them, I tell you. It's never as good. It's never as good. So we're all called by God to add flavour to our world. God wants us not to be bland, but to bring interest and enthusiasm and joy to those around us. Indeed, elsewhere, the Apostle Paul, in his letter to the Colossians, he talks about the importance of making sure that our speech is seasoned with salt, being distinct, if you like, adding goodness, offering a taste of God's grace with the way we share ourselves and the God we follow. And so two relatively simple, hopefully, to understand, but if we think about how we put them into practice, there's a profoundness to them as well. Two pictures which Jesus gives for how we're to be people who make a difference. Sharing God's light through the beauty of our deeds and being salty, preserving what's good, overcoming what's bad, and perhaps above all, adding flavour by being people who bring out the best in others. And so just as Jesus used the everyday stuff of life, like salt, to illustrate God's way of life, got a little gift for each of us today, just to remind us and for us to enjoy and maybe take home, if you don't fancy it now, a way to think about the salt that God brings to our lives. So track these down. I don't know if you've had these for years. Salt and Shake crisps. Do take a packet. It's been a while, maybe. You're welcome. There we go. There we go. And there's a verse in the Psalms which says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good." So perhaps when you eat these, you might want to say a little prayer of thanks to God for his goodness to us, that we might be salt-filled people who share God's goodness with the world around us. And we'll bung the rest in the drop-in, so anyone who comes through the door, they can shake their salt with you as well. All right. All right. We're going to have a song. There's no songs with salt in, to be honest. It's a niche. If you want to write a Christian worship song with salt in, you'd be most welcome. But there's plenty with light in. But we're going to have a song called My Lighthouse, which we've done before. It's a bit of an upbeat one, so that's good. Now, I was chatting with John before this. I guess the idea in the song is that we're meant to follow this lighthouse. God is a lighthouse, and we're meant to go towards the lighthouse, it says in the song, to escape from harm. Now, you'll know as well as me, you're meant to avoid lighthouses, aren't you, really, in terms of stay off the rocks. It doesn't really work as an analogy unless that lighthouse, as some are on the edge of a harbour. And I think that's the idea, bringing us safe to shore. Follow the lighthouse to get home, to get to God safely when the storms of life come. So you're welcome to sing along to this one, or tap your feet, or shake your crisps, or whatever, when this one kicks off.
In my wrestling and in my doubts, in my failures, you won't walk out. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, you are the peace in my troubled sea. In the silence, you won't let go. In the questions, your truth will hold. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, you are the peace in my troubled sea. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness, I will follow you. Oh, my lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You will carry me safe to shore. Safe to shore. Safe to shore. Safe to shore. I won't fear what tomorrow brings. With each morning I'll rise and sing. My God's love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, you are the peace